All right, let's dive right into this explainer by exploring what is arguably the greatest surviving mystery of the ancient world. For nearly 5,000 years, the Great Pyramid of Giza has stood out there in the Egyptian desert. It's the most iconic structure on Earth. Yet, it's funny, the closer we look at it, the less we actually seem to know for sure. Are we looking at the ultimate monument to a single pharaoh's ego, or are we staring at a message written in stone from a completely forgotten chapter of human history?
To really understand the scale of the Great Pyramid, we first have to wrap our heads around the sheer volume of it. We're talking about roughly 2.3 million individual blocks of limestone and granite. It covers over 13 acres of land. To put that into perspective, the volume of material here is so massively off the charts that for almost 4 millennia, this remained the absolute tallest human-made structure on the planet.
But it's not just the amount of stone, it's the insane weight and the logistics involved. Some of the granite blocks used deep inside the king's chamber weigh a staggering 80 tons, and they weren't quarried locally either. They were transported from Aswan, which is over 500 miles away. That is roughly equivalent to hoisting a modern diesel locomotive 150 feet into the air over and over again. And they supposedly did all of this with absolutely nothing but muscle, ropes, and wooden rollers.
And brilliantly, this massive footprint is aligned to true north, with a microscopic error margin of just 0.05 degrees. Not magnetic north, mind you, but true north. It is perfectly level, with a variance of less than an inch across that entire 13-acre foundation. This is a level of geographical and mathematical perfection that would literally require advanced satellites and laser-guided surveying equipment for us to achieve today.
So this brings us to Section 1, the engineering impossibility.
When you look at the raw mechanics, things get really complicated really fast. If we accept the official timeline of a 20-year construction period during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, the ancient builders would have needed to quarry, transport, and perfectly set a block every 2.5 minutes. That is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 2 solid decades, without ever stopping for weather, nightfall, or delays. Which leads us straight into Section 2, the mainstream narrative.
Now, traditional Egyptology actually offers a really fascinating, highly practical explanation for all this. They view it as a total triumph of a skilled, well-fed workforce. Contrary to what movies show us, these weren't slaves, but highly trained laborers working around 2500 BC. They supposedly used copper tools and dolerite pounding stones to carve the blocks. To move them, researchers point to an ancient painting showing workers pouring water in front of a sled. Modern physics backs this up. Wetting sand to exactly 2 to 5% creates capillary bridges, drastically reducing friction. From there, it's theorized they used massive ramp systems to haul the stones up into the sky.
But let's move on to Section 3, anomalies in the stone. Yes, the mainstream view describes an incredible feat of human organization. But as independent researchers point out, there are some pretty glaring physical inconsistencies here. For a civilization entirely obsessed with the afterlife and meticulously documenting their triumphs, the interior of the Great Pyramid asks a deafening question. Where is the actual evidence that Pharaoh Khufu built this as his tomb? They kept records of everything, but they left absolutely zero clear documentation about the construction of their greatest masterpiece.
Think about other Egyptian tombs. They are absolutely overflowing with art, hieroglyphs, and royal seals. But this structure, it is entirely sterile. No mummy has ever been found inside. There are literally no soot marks on the ceilings from torches, which really begs the question, how did they see anything while working in pitch blackness? And from an engineering standpoint, modern attempts to cut 80-ton granite blocks with soft copper tools just fail completely. Engineers have even pointed out circular drill cores and precision cuts in the stone that suggest advanced machinery rather than hand tools.
Furthermore, this mystery is still evolving today. Modern technology has detected things traditional archaeology just didn't anticipate. In 1993, a tiny robot sent into a narrow shaft discovered a hidden limestone door with weird copper handles. And then in 2017, advanced particle scanning revealed a massive, previously unknown void right above the Grand Gallery. It's so big you could park a passenger jet inside of it. Yet it is still completely sealed. These spaces remain largely unexplored, which just deepens the mystery of what this building actually is. Okay, let's look at Section 4, Messages in the Stars. Since the physical evidence for a 2500 BC tomb is surprisingly thin, we have to look elsewhere. And here is where we find a massive gap between the accepted academic timeline and a pretty radical alternative proposed by geologists and astronomers. Mainstream historians anchor the site to Khufu, but what if the site is thousands of years older, like dating back to the end of the last ice age?
Researchers are pointing to some really compelling environmental and celestial clues here. Geologist Dr. Robert Schoch examined the Great Sphinx and found deep vertical fissures. This is a very specific type of erosion caused by heavy, prolonged rainfall, weather that the Sahara Desert literally hasn't seen since around 10,500 BC. Adding to this, researcher Robert Balville noted that the unique layout of the three Giza pyramids perfectly mirrors the stars of Orion's belt. But here's the catch. They don't map to the sky of 2500 BC. They align exactly with how the constellation looked in 10,500 BC. It's like a giant cosmic puzzle.
This opens the door to Section 5, the Lost Civilization Theory.
These geological clues pave the way for a completely different view of human history, which is fiercely advocated by figures like Graham Hancock. The theory is that a devastating global cataclysm, likely a comet strike during the Younger Dryas period around 12,800 years ago, wiped out an advanced predecessor civilization. The survivors passed down their knowledge, leaving Giza as a highly resilient blueprint around 10,500 BC. So according to this view, when Pharaoh Khufu showed up in 2500 BC, he didn't build the Great Pyramid from scratch. He simply discovered it, restored it, and claimed it for himself.
Hancock suggests the Great Pyramid just isn't a product of brute force trial and error construction. He argues it's a mathematical time capsule. Its dimensions perfectly approximate pi. It encodes the solar year, the equinoxes, and even the exact curvature of the Earth itself. As Hancock puts it, this wasn't manpower, this was know-how. It was a message left for the future by a lost civilization that understood geometry and astronomy on a level we are only just beginning to rediscover today.
And finally, we arrive at Section 6, the Great Archaeological Debate. So the crucial point is that we are left with this fierce, ongoing standoff between two vastly different worldviews. On one side, we have institutional Egyptologists rightfully protecting their national heritage and the 2500 BC timeline from what they consider to be fringe theories. And on the totally opposite side, we have independent researchers demanding open excavations to rewrite the human story based on these crazy physical anomalies. It really is a clash between protecting an established academic legacy and relentlessly pursuing new, controversial evidence.
As we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder the next time you look at pictures of those towering stones in the sand. Is the Great Pyramid simply the ultimate resting place for an ancient king, built with wet sand and copper chisels? Or are we staring blindly at a mathematically perfect time capsule left behind by a totally forgotten world? The doors are still sealed, the voids are completely unexplored, and the stones remain silent. It's up to you to look at the evidence and decide. Keep questioning, keep learning, and thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.